Hello. In this lesson, we're going to look at the wire cut command. If you'd like to follow along, please go into your sample folder, chapter 1, and open the file named wirecut. So we have two closed surfaces here. We have a box, we have a sphere, and we have some curves. And wirecut is a nice simple command, very powerful. And it would really be kind of akin to taking a hot wire and actually kind of cutting some foam with it, if you've ever experienced that. So the way we apply the command is we can go to Solid, Solid Edit Tools, and select Wirecut. Or under the Solid Edit menu, we can select Wirecut. We close this window. So the first thing Wirecut needs is a curve, which it uses as the wire. So we'll go ahead and select this curve here. Then it wants the object to cut. And we'll cut this object. Once I have that, I drag this down as far as I want to go. If I want to cut all the way through the object, I can just hit Enter, which I'll do this time. As soon as I do that, Rhino is going to highlight a portion of the object I'm cutting, and that's going to be the portion that gets cut away. If I don't like that selection, I can click Invert, and it'll grab the other side. That's the portion I want to cut away, so I'll just hit Enter. And you can see, simple as that, makes a nice, lovely cut for us and closes it all back off. I'll go ahead and undo that. I'll select my curve. Let me switch gumball off. And I'll press my spacebar to reapply the wire cut command. Press this for the object, then hit Enter. And this time, rather than going all the way through, I'm just going to drag down, and let's see, we'll get a snap halfway through the object here. So I'll just snap to the midpoint. And now we can drag either forwards or backwards. And by default, we're set to normal to first extrusion. So it's always going to go normal to that first extruded shape. And next time through, we'll look at making that a little different. But for now, we'll just drag this out this direction here. Again, it shows us which object it's going to get rid of. I want to invert this. So we set invert back to no. So this is the direction that it would normally be by default. And if I'm happy with that, I can press Enter to accept it. I can also click this and tell it to keep all, and that'll keep this piece and this piece. But in this case, I do want to get rid of this section here, so I'll leave Keep All set to No. I'll press Enter, and now it's made that cut, and it's dragged it out this way, just as we saw. Now, something to be aware of, because my curve is not planar, you can see the shape here. My cutout isn't going to be planar either. So we have a non-planar cutout here. If that's an issue, I can take that same curve, I can go to Transform, Transform Set Points, and make sure it's a nice flat line. This time we're going to select that wire. We'll select Wire Cut, Objects to Cut. And we're going to bring this down just a little ways in here. And this time, rather than dragging out normal to surface, we'll change this. And we want to move in the Y direction here rather than having this skewed. So we'll go to the Y direction. Now you see that it's moving in the Y. You can also have it go in both directions. So now it's going to go front and back. And we don't always have to cut everything away. We can just make smaller cuts here as well. If I do this, you can see it's going to cut that section out for us. So we've cut this nice little channel through the object. Now you could also do this and set up a nice little series of veins in something. And there's a new command in Rhino 5 called Tween Curve. Let me go ahead and start typing that word. You can see it immediately fills it out on the command line. What that means is it'll take a curve and blend it the number of steps that you specify until it would look like this. So if this is my start curve, and this is my end curve. Currently the number is set to 2. I can set that higher. So in 4 steps, this is what this curve would look like to get to here. Let's go ahead and set that to a smaller number just for this particular case. And we'll hit Enter. And now we have 4 curves that take this much more radical kind of a curve to this much gentler curve. And we're going to go ahead and use these to wire cut. Fortunately, we can't use all 4 at once, so we're going to have to do these individually. So I'll select this as my object to cut. If you're going to try and replicate all these curves, then you want to give yourself a depth to cut down to. In this particular case, I'm going to snap to the midpoint. I'll switch off both sides, and for depth, I'm just going to type 2. And drag in this direction, and click. So we've made that first cut. The second cut, I'll do the same thing. Drag down to that midpoint, type 2, drag out this way, and cut. And I'll repeat that for all of these. You should snap to the midpoint, type 2 for my depth, and dragging forward with the cursor. I could go in that direction, but then my spacing would be messed up. So drag this way, and cut out. And you can see what's happened with this one is by the time this got here, these got so close together that it actually cut away the material. So if I undo that one, we'll reapply it. I'll come down to midpoint. And let's try a direction of 1 on that and see if that works for us. Looks like that's still going to give us an error there. Let me cut that one. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll undo these, and we'll make that a different depth on all of these. So I'll go back to here, I'll apply wire cut, objects to cut, cut to midpoint, and we'll do a cut of 1. Reapply the same command, using my midpoint as the depth. That way I know everything's going to line up. Type a 1, drag in this direction. Objects to cut, still the box, midpoint snap, distance of 1, drag in this direction. Objects to cut, distance of 1, and there we go. Let me fix this then. So as you can see, we're cutting through here. And the reason we're doing that is this first curve, if we look at it in the right viewport, is actually on this angle here. So when we're extruding that normal to the curve, it's cutting backwards, whereas all the other ones are cutting vertically. So let me make a change there. So I've got that one. I'm going to do a set points on this one to flatten that curve out. I'm going to set it in the Z direction, so going up and down. And we'll set it there. Now, hopefully when we do the wire cut, I've got the wire selected. There's my object. I'm going to cut down to the midpoint, do a depth cut of 1. And there you can see we have a much more reasonable look to this. Now I would actually have to go back and take these 2 curves, do a set points to them, and then tween the curves, and that way all of my input curves are going to be starting at the same depth, and they're going to have the same angle to them as I drag them down. If we take a look at that in rendered shadow mode, you can still see from this view that gives us a very nice effect of this curve transforming into this curve here. And that concludes our look at the wire cut command.